Welcome to week 121 of Misha Dianne Watch NBC's Santa Barbara. Guess what I got for Christmas? A green screen. So hopefully we'll be able to figure out the best way to get some extra effects into the podcast. We have finished episode 587 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Monday, November 17th, 1986. It's week 121 of the series, and in our throwback TV watching that we do on weeknights, we saw Carmen Castillo, on an episode of Switch that we saw last week, episode 3.08, Lady of the Deep. Mm-hmm. And we saw Alan Miller, who will be showing up someday as Harlan Richards, on Hawaii Five-0, episode 10.07, Shake Hands with the Man on the Moon. And last night we saw Alejandro Rey, who played Dr. Ramirez, the doctor that stole Santana's baby, on the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, Season 3, Episode 4, The Life Work of Juan Diaz. He was the title character, who ends up a mummy in that episode. Back in the real world of 1986, Santa Barbara, Gina gets the biker to ram the front door of the mansion. Mason unlatches the door and lets her in at the last second, and the motorcycle races through the door and crashes into the fountain. And Gina is knocked unconscious briefly. Everyone, of course, notices the smell of the pigsty that she's been in. Mason tells Gina she's arrived too late. The wedding is over. But Sophia eventually confesses that the ceremony wasn't completed, and the Reverend agrees the marriage is not complete.
Now, we actually had a little bit of a discussion about this, didn't we? Because really, technically, I don't think you need a ceremony. It's just signing the papers. But
I believe I actually did some further research maybe at the time, and California law says that as soon as both parties have said, I do, it is legally a wedding. So, but then again, Santa Barbara occasionally fudges things, so... Cece tells Gina nothing is going to happen without the tape. While Gina has a shower, Cece and Mason snipe at each other. Mason says that he kind of handed it to Gina for getting this far, and Cece is completely on the opposite side of that. Mason says, well, he's doing it for, Lily and Brandon. And Cece says, well, even an iguana raises their young or something like that. Mm-hmm. Santana phones to reveal that Lily is the one with the tape. So when Cece and Mason go to confront Gina, they realize she's sneaked out of the mansion to go and meet Lily. Did you think the wedding was going to happen, or what were your thoughts? Do you think Sophia and Cece were going to get through it? Or?
Well, if you watch the episode, there's actually ample time to get through the entire ritual. They hear the motorcycle coming, and for some reason they seem to slow down rather than speed up, which I think most people would want to do. So I sort of feel like at some level, maybe they didn't entirely want to finalize it, just to leave sort of the possibility open of saving Kelly.
Haley says, I can't believe Gina's missing again. Ted starts to tell Eden about what Haley witnessed, but Eden sort of cuts him off by starting to talk about it and saying that she had a terrible fight with Cruz before he went out on the boat, and she wanted to come along, but he took Victoria instead. Victoria was there for him. In my mind, if there were any feelings that were acknowledged, it would happen now, even if they haven't done anything about it yet. So Ted kind of thinks, maybe I don't need to reveal anything. Eden's sort of on the right track already, and she'll talk to Cruz, and, Haley and Ted won't need to get involved. The phone rings, and it's Cruz, but Eden refuses to take it. She says, I'm kind of afraid of what he has to say. And then Ted says, as long as he tells you the truth, no matter how painful it is. Maybe there's a reason that the two of you broke up before he left. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just not right. Eden says, you usually tell me to work things out. And so she suspects that Ted knows something when Ted says, that was before. Before what? Haley runs off, and Eden wonders why. Now, let's get back to Lily. She has agreed to give Brick the tape, but she wants to give Gina the heads up first, because she's still all about this mother-daughter relationship, and she wants to take it to the police, not the Capwells. Now, Brick says, oh, sure, no problem, but why don't you give me the tape, which makes Lily suspicious, and she decides that he's not going to give it to the police, and he says, okay, I'm going to give it to Santana so she can get her son Brandon back. Of course, Lily's mother is Brandon's mother, so Lily says, well, Brandon thinks Gina's his mother, so I don't feel this is in the best interests of Brandon. So Brick points out that both he and Lily were taken from their mother at an early age, and how did that work out? But that's not enough to I guess, win Lily over. So Brick has to search the room, and eventually, because Lily flinches when he moves the Bible, he finds the tape hidden in the Bible. And now Brick Wallace has the tape, which is something I hadn't remembered from the original airing, and it's a nice twist. Gina arrives and finds out that Brick took the tape. Then a note arrives. People have been trying to phone all day, but of course Brick had unplugged the phone earlier. The note from Santana asks Gina to meet her at the Orient Express. Lily assures Gina that Brick went to Santana with the tape, not Cece. So Gina's trying to desperately make sure that tape doesn't get into the Capwell hands. I think she's okay with it being in Brick's hands as long as he can head him off. She can head him off. Cece arrives at Santana's house after getting a message from Santana, only to find Brick there with the tape and a gun. So I'm thinking that maybe Gina was sent to the Orient Express by Brick too, with a fake note from Santana to get her out of the way while he deals with Cece. Brick says, "You get the tape. Santana gets Brandon." And Cece, as always, argues with Brick. He actually wants the tape and nothing else to be changed with respect to Brandon's guardianship. Gina figures things out and shows up at Santana's place and warns Brick to never trust Cece Capwell no matter what he says. She says that she raised Brandon, and if they ask him who his mother is, he'll say Gina. He knows he can trust me to do the right thing, even if it means giving him away. She teases Brick with that possibility. Brick says, "What have you got to bargain?" Gina says, "I don't want you to go into any agreements with Cece. He's given Brandon to Santana before, and he's always found a way to snatch her back. I think that Brandon belongs with Santana." Cece says, "You lying witch, that's half the reason you wanted to marry me." Gina says, "I'll give him up. Just give me the tape. Otherwise, I'll tell Brandon everything. How Santana gave him away, how her grandfather made her do it, how Channing was involved, and he's not even a real Capwell. I'll turn him against this whole family." This is actually an interesting twist, because somehow it's possible the tape could give both Gina and Santana what they want, just because of the sequence of people who've had it in their possession. What do you think? Who will agree to what?
Well, this whole scene actually made me think about how different things were in the pre-internet age, because of course now Brandon's actually old enough he could just go online and probably find out a lot of stuff himself. But I don't know. I feel like we're going to be still doing some back and forth with this tape. I feel like someone's going to grab it and run out the door, and everyone else will run out after them. I think it could change hands quite a few more times before we finally get it resolved.
Both Santana and Lily could theoretically show up now with slightly different motivations than Brick and Gina. Cruz asks Victoria if they made love in the White House. The White House. Cruz asks Victoria if they made love in the lighthouse. And Cruz says, "As confused as I was making love to Eden." Victoria says, "All I know is you have an awful big stake in believing that now. That does not mean it's true." So Victoria, I think, has sort of consoled herself with the possibility that Cruz actually knew it was Victoria the whole time. even though he was high on whatever she gave him. I don't know. I think she's got some wishful thinking there. She warns Cruz that Haley saw them and has probably told Ted. Cruz tries to call Eden, but she won't take his call, so he leaves to find her. Eden arrives, and Victoria asks her why she didn't answer Cruz's call. And Eden says Eden wants to know what happened from Victoria, and Victoria tells her to talk to Cruz. I think Victoria realizes it would be Cruz would be angry with her if she told Eden what happened. Plus, I don't think she wants to have that conversation with Eden, even though I think she wants Eden to know in a way so that she'll be angry with Cruz. Eden finds Cruz at the Capwell house. I know you slept with her. And he says, oh, it's not what you think. And Eden starts to run out and he goes, I thought it was you. It's not clear if Eden heard that. But anyway, I remember that line from when I originally saw it. I thought it was you. It was kind of like, we were on a break. Of course, on her way out, Eden crosses paths with Victoria, who's on her way in. They don't really stop to talk much. So Eden takes off. Victoria enters the Capwell mansion, finds Cruz at that little table near the pond. Lying on the floor, he has collapsed after his altercation with Eden, because he actually probably should not have left the hospital. So I doubt anything big is going to happen to Cruz. He's probably going to get taken back to the hospital, or maybe she'll just, wake him up. But I don't know. Cruz was probably in no shape to run after Eden. This is one of those things where Eden might just jet off to Paris like she's done in the past. So I don't know how long it'll actually be before Eden and Cruz have a chance to talk this out. And we'll see how angry Cruz is with Victoria in the long term. All right, that's the end of our episode, and we had all the usual cast credits: Rosa, Sophia Capwell-Armonti, Kelly Capwell Perkins. Air Supply is no longer in the credits, but the minister was once again played by Raleigh Bond. So that is it for our Monday episode. And we will see if Gina ever marries Cece in exchange for that tape. We'll watch episode 588 and report back. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
And Happy New Year. We have watched episode 588 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, November 18th, 1986. So next week in Santa Barbara world, it's Thanksgiving. But we've still got the rest of this week to finish. And as you'll remember, Cruz collapses in Victoria's arms. He staggers out to find Eden. She follows him home. Eden is not there. Cruz calls the Orient Express, and they won't give him any information. So Cruz tells Victoria to go, and Victoria reiterates that unconsciously he knew he was making love to her. And Cruz says, well, you tried to tell me that one earlier, so he's not buying it. Cruz asks Sophia where Eden is, and she says Eden told her not to tell either. Now, this is one of those things that Eden's done before, or she's willfully making things harder for her and Cruz to recover from.
Yeah, we saw that before. I think it was in the episode before this where she wouldn't answer the phone when Cruz called. So. And
I think, months ago she just flew out of town for a while when they were in the middle of an argument. Cruz goes to the Orient Express, and Mark says that Miss Capwell left instructions explicitly not to tell him. So this is our Mark who works at the Orient Express, not Mark McCormick, who was on the show, overlapping with this Mark. Julia spots Cruz and sits him down and says, you've still got a fever. She insists on taking him to the hospital, and he agrees, but asks Julia to call the marina to see if Eden took her father's boat out. While we're at the Orient Express bar, Keith finds Victoria there, and Keith says he thinks Eden's onto her. So He's taunting Victoria and trying to get with Eden. I think that's his main purpose with these little meetings. Victoria says, "Why are you so interested in my life?" And Keith says, "I'm part of the Victoria Lane Anti-Fan Club," of which I think there may have been a few at that Santa Barbara reunion. "I don't think Eden knows that you can make her life hell the way you did my sister." And Victoria says, "She's making her own life hell." Keith says, "I never thought I could feel sympathy for a Capwell. She's all vulnerable." And Victoria says, "Maybe she needs a friend." So I think maybe Victoria's thinking, "Oh yeah, if Keith is interested in Eden, why not? Why not? Then you can help Eden and hurt Cruz." Keith says, "I don't think I want to be bait for you to catch Cruz." And Victoria says, "You are really out searching for villains. Most of the time, things happen, and no one really knows why." Which is a really intriguing outlook on life that could be ascribed to a lot of situations. So I feel like, what do you think the chances are for Keith while Victoria and Eden, or while Cruz and Eden are on the outs? Is there any opening there for Keith, or?
I think the only opening would come if Eden somehow sees some advantage of using Keith to maybe make Cruz jealous or something like that.
I feel like that's almost what happened with Kirk Cranston, and that didn't work out too well for her. Now back to the main focus of most of this week, of course, the Gina tape situation. Mason and Santana arrive at Santana's place to find Gina and Cece trying to convince Brick to give them the tape. Brick gives Santana the tape. Santana asks Cece for $100,000 and 2 tickets to Acapulco. She's going to leave Santa Barbara for 1 year with Brandon. Generally, these things don't work out for Santana, so let's see how good this one goes. Brick tries to pick up Brandon from the Capwell house, and Sophia and Brick argue about Santana taking Brandon away from a year. And Sophia says to him, "I thought you'd forgiven us." Brandon stays put until we have that tape. So now this is kind of put a bit of a thing back between Sophia and Brick. But Brick's all out on Santana's side on this.
I was thinking as we were watching this how many times various people have tried to take off with Brandon, and I don't think any of them have really worked out very well.
And it's clear from behind the scenes that Cece's planning, as usual, to somehow pull the rug out from under anyone who has tried to make a deal with him. However, Gina also has a plan. She sneaks into Santana's place and threatens her with a fireplace shovel. During the struggle, Santana gets the shovel away from her, and I think Gina got off easily by just being kicked out of the place. Cece tells Mason he doesn't plan to let Santana have Brandon. So they're gathering the $100,000 and maybe even the 2 tickets to Acapulco, but I guess Cece's got something up his sleeve. Mason runs into Julia and asks if she can still consider him as the father of her baby. Julia says, "Possibly." Mason says, "Part of my attraction to this whole deal is you. I think you're a very special person." And Julia says, "Thank you for your vote of confidence." So I think if I were a soap opera fan, I would see this and think that is where this is going, definitely. I think it's going to be a Julia and Mason baby conception without any chance of a relationship. Just a contractual deal. Gina tells Lily that Santana has the tape. She does a little bit annoyed with Lily over how it all kind of went haywire due to Lily. They call Keith over because Gina has a plan. First thing she says to Keith is, "I see you're thrilled to find me alive." Gina says she has a plan that will only take an hour, and then she can marry Cece, and Keith can be counsel for Capwell Enterprises. So somehow Gina thinks she can come back from all this. Keith says he just wants more than the 1/3 share of all the Capwell money that Gina is now offering. And Lily just wants to get it over with and agrees to give him half of her third, and Keith takes the deal. So Keith's going to get about half of everything. As Gina comes in the front door of the Capwell mansion, Keith boosts Lily into the window of Cece's study. Or is it the other way around? I got a bit confused as to who was where during this following scene. But when Brick and Santana arrive at the Capwell mansion through the front door, Cece tries to talk her out of taking Brandon. Meanwhile, Keith is also inside, and he turns out the lights. When the lights come back on, Brick is lying on the floor, and Gina has run off with a tape in her hand. Everyone chases Gina. Meanwhile, Keith and Lily escape with the real tape. When they catch Gina, the tape she has is just a copy of her Mrs. Capwell's Cookies commercial. And she pretends that's what she found in Brick's pocket. Keith phones Cece from a phone booth and tells him, the deal's back on. In exchange for the tape, you have to marry Gina. So that was a wild roller coaster ride. And what do you think? Is Cece actually going to marry Gina finally after months of a threat that was what was going to happen?
I feel like there must be copies of this tape somewhere.
Well, it only matters, because it's to clear Kelly. It doesn't really matter about copies because no one's trying to destroy it, right? Yeah. So this is doesn't bode well for Santana though. She's lost all the leverage she had earlier, and I don't think she's getting the 100,000 or Brandon or the trip to Acapulco. And I suspect that a wedge between Brick and Sophia is still going to be there, even though this was just a very short-lived time when he had control of the tape. He's maybe set something in motion that's going to take a while to heal.
I guess I kind of feel watching all this that no one really has Kelly's interests at heart, because I don't feel like CC would have been dickering around over the terms of it if he was really concerned about Kelly.
I think probably Mason kind of did a little dig at some point about that. Because Mason, even though he's been helping, obviously wants Kelly back. He's made some snide comments about all the parties involved. Well, and that is it for this episode. And we had a full cast credits now 2 days in a row, and the main credits were identical to yesterday. Rosa's there, Kelly's there, Sophia Capwell-Armonti is there, without a slash between Capwell and Armonti, and no guest cast. So no one was getting married. So that's it for the Tuesday episode. We'll be back after we've watched episode 589 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Even when he came back here to Santa Barbara, he never once blamed you for Kate. He left you out of it.
There was no one to blame, Keith.
Oh, come on, darling. You and I both know better. Don't you went after him like a barracuda. When Katie got in your way, you chewed her up and spat her out like you will Eden. But then she'll be wilier prey, though.
Oh, you are really out searching for villains. You know, most of the time there aren't any. Most of the time things just happen. Nobody really knows why.
Why do things just seem to happen a lot around you? Hello, Victoria. Where's Cruz on this wonderful evening? I mean, have you finally won our little chimichanga, or is Eden still in the competition?
Welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We finished episode 589 of Santa Barbara, originally aired Wednesday, November 19th, 1986. Back at Gina's motel, where Keith has been using the phone to call Cece. He packs up the tape, and Lily shows up and pulls a gun on him, suspecting him of trying to steal the tape for himself. And, of course, Keith says, oh, well, you're the one with the gun. That's probably what you want to do. Gina arrives, and although they both try to blame each other, Gina just wants them all to get along. And Keith is on the phone with Cece and tells him to marry Gina today. Gina wants to have the mess cleaned up first, I guess, resulting from her motorcycle accident. Mason suggests maybe she should wait till she can book the Sistine Chapel. And Sophia says, I think it's appropriate that you should be married among the ruins. May I suggest Lionel's dinosaur pit? So the wedding is going ahead. Gina's just going to get cleaned up. And Lily shows up with an alternate dress that she managed to get somewhere. Cruz realizes that Eden probably went to the lighthouse. No, not probably. He knows in his heart that Eden went to the lighthouse. Where we see Eden looking at the bed where Victoria and Cruz spent several days. And, of course, she imagines the worst. We see her fantasizing about what happened. And it's all Cruz going, oh, I really wanted to be with you the whole time. Ha ha. Which, even though she's completely made it up, makes Eden very angry. So when Cruz arrives and tells her that he was feverish and drugged, she doesn't accept his excuse. Typical Eden. Keith arrives, having learned from Victoria that Cruz was on his way to the lighthouse. Cruz finds him to be intrusive, but Eden says that Keith has been a friend through this. So Keith's little attempts have apparently made an impression on Eden.
Yes, he's still very much in the friend zone, we can see, but he has gained her trust.
Cruz leaves, and Eden tells Keith that Victoria won, which I think should make Keith happy if he's interested in Eden, because that means Cruz is out of the way in Eden's mind. Haley tries to get Gina to turn over the tape without going through with the wedding, I think. That doesn't have any effect on Gina. Gina reminds Cece that if he sleeps with Sophia during the 6-month marriage, then she will get $1 million for each offense. Cece reminds Gina that if she sleeps with anyone else, the deal is null and void. And this is where I'm thinking that Gina may end up not being able to hold out for the 6 months. Gina brings in some armed guards to guard the tape as she plays it for the family so that they all know that she has it. And then they lock it in a little plastic case throughout the ceremony. Everyone is surprised when Lily shows up to perform the ceremony. And then during the ceremony, Eden, Sophia, Ted, and Haley all walk out at various points. And by the end of it, the 2 guards she hired to guard the tape are the only ones left who can witness the marriage certificate. Then we see Eden and Cruz each separately contemplating their wedding rings and flashing back to that fake wedding in the church they had for themselves. And it ends with Eden dropping her wedding ring into the pond. So, well, let's see how far Keith gets with Eden, I guess. I assume Victoria will try to climb back on board the cruise train if she sees that Eden has given up. In the bedroom, Gina finds Cece packing her things up. He's thrown all her clothes into her suitcase. He's swiped all of her makeup into a case. And she goes, "What's going on?" He goes, "You're not sleeping here." And so she gets on the bed and says seductively that he doesn't need to remain celibate for those next 6 months. And he approaches the bed and bends over and flips the mattress, dumping her onto the floor. I think Gina was thinking that somehow Cece would succumb to her, even though Sophia's in the guest house. That seems to have been her plan the whole time, and no matter how angry Cece was with her all day, she thought that was going to happen. So I think she thinks it's still going to happen at some point in the next 6 months. But I think Cece will hold out, and Gina will either sleep with Keith or Mason.
Makes sense.
Now, it would make sense for Cece to tell Mason, "Hey, why don't I give you $100,000 or $1 million if you manage to get Gina in bed and nullify the contract?" Or what else could he promise Mason? Where is Mason right now? Is he the DA? I can't remember now who's what. Oh, he's the DA again. So Cece doesn't need to promise him anything in corporate world.
He and Julia have been negotiating, so I think his attention will be kind of more on Julia in the coming episodes.
I think that although Julia wants to have a baby with no strings attached, I feel like, that could always go awry, both on her part and Mason's part. But then if Mason's also simultaneously trying to seduce Gina, I strongly suspect he would hide that from Julia either way, because she might not find him as fit of a potential father for her child if he's sneaking around trying to seduce his father's wife. So yeah, I'm looking forward to further Julia and Mason scenes, definitely, and presumably we'll see some wackiness now that Gina is back in the Capwell mansion, similar to when she was there before that time that she was trying to seduce Mason all those years ago when Linda Gibney was playing Gina. So I think we'll have some fun as we approach, well, we're in mid-November, so we got a couple of weeks left in the sweep. So then as we approach Christmas, maybe they'll do something wacky for Christmas this year, like the Christmas Carol they did with Mason the other year. That's it for this episode. We did spot some Santa Barbara people in various shows that we watched. I think we saw Janice Page, future Minx Lockridge, in Alfred Hitchcock Presents or something. We saw Amy on Hawaii Five-0, which I believe her mother was working on at the time. And
we saw C.C. Capwell on a very obscure children's show called Electra Woman and Dinah Girl, which I think probably ran, maybe with the Shazam.
Croft Super Show.
Right, it's okay. So I was
it's interesting. I watched the Croft Super Show as a kid, but I don't remember Electra Woman and Dinah Girl. I remember Speed Buggy, I remember Beast Man and Wild Boy, and then they had those Shazam cartoons, I think, and I don't know, maybe they rotated them throughout the years, or maybe there was something else I was watching, like Land of the Lost or something, and I would switch over, to watch Land of the Lost halfway through, and maybe I always, never saw Electra Woman and Dinah Girl because of that. But I've become aware of it in recent years, obviously, and we showed up on Tubi and in my recommended for you, based on what else I watch, I guess. And there's only 16 episodes, so we figured we might as well watch a two-parter every Saturday.
And of course, Electra Woman is played by a very young Deirdre Hall. So if you're a Days of Our Lives fan, that's one to check out for sure. Yeah,
it's got some interesting vibes. It's got some. They're trying to bring back the old Batman '66 vibes, even with the theme song that they play when they drive around in their Dynacycle or whatever it is. And
I feel like they were perhaps feeding off some of the energy of Wonder Woman too.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So, so that's it for the Wednesday episode. Oh, an exciting wedding on a Wednesday, which I guess it's the middle of sweeps, so that explains it. But normally Wednesday is sort of a write-off in the soap world. So that's exciting.
What will be the cliffhanger this week?
I mean, I doubt Cruz will succumb to Victoria in only 2 days, unless she drugs him again. Ted, we have, we haven't seen much of the other gang this week. We haven't seen the Lionel, Jane, Caroline, Alice bunch, Pearl. Haven't seen for a while. And then, we did see Brick and Santana a little bit as part of this storyline. And who else is there? Is there another group? I don't know. Anyway, so we'll see if... Courtney and Madeline and that storyline, which has been going on for the better part of this year, I think. Well, we finally find out for sure who killed Madeline. And will the other characters find out? Maybe that's something that will, now that the wedding is over, they'll start bringing those characters back. And if it sweeps, presumably, maybe that's how they'll end the November sweeps. They'll finally reveal the Madeline murderer. So, yeah, we'll see. We will be back after we watch episode 590 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
But I know you love me. I know it.
Well, I've learned a secret, and that's not to love anyone too much, so I try not to.
This isn't exactly the environment I'd envisioned, but the surroundings are secondary.
Nonsense. Surroundings are everything, Gina. Why don't you wait until you can book the Sistine Chapel?
No, you'd just love that, wouldn't you, Mason?
I've always thought you were marrying with unseemly haste. What will people say?
It doesn't really matter to me what they say, because they'll be saying it to Mrs. C.C. Capwell.
I think it's very appropriate that you're going to be married among the ruins. May I suggest Lionel's dinosaur pit?
You move it, please. The excitement is killing me.
Dearly beloved, we're gathered together today in the presence of...
Get to the point.
This is my wedding day, and I want it to be nice.
You made that all but impossible.
For richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live.
No, for 6 months and forget all the other garbage.
Do I have to start again?
Just wake me up when it's over.
You need to say I do.
Look, you little evangelious tramp, don't you tell me what to do.
You may kiss your bride, Mr. Capwell.
You may kiss my... She's lucky I don't tear her head off.
Oh, sweetheart, I can't imagine that you've forgotten so soon that we're man and wife, to have and to hold and all the rest of it. That means everything you do is my business. So, where are you going, precious?
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 590 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, November 20th, 1986. At Marv's Bar, somewhere in the north of California, Pearl is showing around a photo of Brian. Courtney has followed him, and he tells her he needs to go it alone. He tells her to go home. Sybil tells Pearl she's already told him all she knows about Brian, but he points out that every time they talk, she seems to remember a little bit more. Pearl tells her the story about Brian's girlfriend who died because of the abortion that Pearl talked him into. So I think he's hoping that that gets passed on to Brian, that he's, taken responsibility for that. And that actually, as we did see last time Sybil and Brian were talking, that was one of the main things that Brian was angry with Pearl about. Courtney spies on the bookstore and sees Sybil talking to Brian. And Sybil tells Brian that Pearl is passing around his photo, so Brian decides he needs to hide out at the cabin. Brian swings by Marv's Bar, and Courtney shows up there and pretends that she's a writer and tries to get him to tell her a tale. Marv mentions Brian is famous for his stories, and that's why he gets all his drinks for free. So they managed to talk Brian into telling a story, and everyone is very engaged by it before Brian suddenly runs out. So I guess he's headed for that cabin. So I don't know if Courtney will be able to follow him quickly enough to find out where the cabin is. Gina sleeps in a chair while dreaming of kissing Cece. Cece sleeps in his bed while dreaming of strangling Gina. Cece decides to sneak out to visit Sophia in the guest house. As he tries to sneak past Gina, she spots him wearing his robe and reminds him that she'll get $1 million if he sleeps with Sophia. But Cece says that Gina's a nymphomaniac and she's the one who won't last 6 months without sleeping with someone else. Working late on his dinosaur dig, Lionel comforts Sophia. Cece is annoyed to find Lionel with Sophia and digging away at 12:30 in the morning. Cece asks how Warren is, and Lionel says he's doing okay. So's Lakin. Then Cece asks how things are going with Carolyn. When Lionel says they're going well, he says, was she honest enough to tell you who she left me for? And Lionel says, we didn't get into it. So I don't know if this has put something into Lionel's head that he's going to have to ask Carolyn about. Will it be, I don't know, someone we know? Gina sees shadows in the guest house with her binoculars, and she realizes she needs a witness to prove that Cece and Sophia are together. She decides Keith is not probably going to want to do it for free, so she just calls the police and says she sees a prowler in the guest house. Paul arrives, but when they burst into the guest house, it is empty. Cece and Sophia are out kissing in the bushes. And by the time Gina gets back to the bedroom, Cece is back in bed. And she tries once again to seduce him, but he says he hates her. She tries the old, hate and love are close together, but it doesn't work on Cece. And speaking of Paul, he is annoyed that Alice won't stop talking about Brian. And when he touches her, she flinches. And after Paul leaves, Alice tells Jane and Caroline that she recalls another policeman touching her when she was in 6th grade. And then she recalls hearing a gunshot, and then she ended up in the mental hospital. What are you thinking? Are you thinking that Alice killed that police officer?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to just keep watching to find out.
Looks like they may be accelerating that reveal soon. Mm-hmm. Jane asks Carolyn why she cares for Alice so much. You never take your eyes off her. Carolyn hugs Jane and says that she never did that enough when Jane was a little girl. Lionel tells Carolyn that Alice is like a daughter to him, and then Lionel confesses that he lied when they first met, when he told Carolyn that he only wanted to be friends with her. Carolyn says, I don't know what the right thing to do is, and they kiss, but she says, not with Jane and Alice right upstairs. Lionel suggests they go down to the boat for some privacy, and as they leave, Jane watches, crying. So it feels like maybe Jane feels like she's going to be losing Lionel to her mother, one way or the other, with that. And that brings us to the end of a Thursday episode. The week wraps up tomorrow with episode 591. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
She doesn't believe in keeping secrets.
Was she honest enough to tell you why she walked out on me and who for?
We didn't get into it.
This fidelity clause is going to kill me.
As far as I know, no one ever died from lack of sex. I'm very sick from it.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 591 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, November 21st, 1986. Gina tries to get Keith to sleep with her, but he turns her down. She says, are you seeing someone else? Courtney Capwell? Keith says, what I'm seeing is hundreds of thousands of voluptuous dollars going down the drain.
I do always love Keith and Gina scenes, and it seems to me in this episode she does mention a couple times about him being the Capwell lawyer.
Yes, she says that I guess the documents have been signed and he is now the Capwell lawyer. So it'll be interesting to see what he manages to do with that during, whatever time the agreement is in effect until presumably Gina sleeps with Mason, as my current guess. It looks like Keith is too greedy to succumb. But I don't know if he can get back into the good graces of Cece somehow, so that if Mason screws up someday, Cece might install him back as DA somehow with his strings that he probably could pull.
Well, I have to say it was fun to have Keith as the DA. Not probably very good for the legal system in Santa Barbara, but it was fun. Gina's probably gonna try to sleep with either Keith or Cece, but I think Cece will figure out that maybe sicking Mason on her is the best way to do it. But I think Gina would know Mason was tricking her into violating the agreement, so I don't know how he could make her fall for it. Victoria tells Cruz that he was calling out Eden's name when they were together in the lighthouse. Cruz is horrified that she's kept this from him and Eden, and insists that she tell Eden. But Victoria does the opposite and tells Eden that they both wanted each other after 5 long years apart, and runs out of the Orient Express, much to Cruz's horror. Yeah, it's interesting. Every time Victoria appears on the scene, no one actually seems very happy to see her. So I can definitely see where fans were a little bit annoyed that she was getting in the way of his relationship with Eden.
Romantically, do you see her ending up with anyone?
I don't know. She's, I mean, even Keith doesn't want to see her. Cruz is really upset whenever he sees her. Obviously, so is Eden. So I think if there were chemistry between her and Keith, I might have said that would have been interesting. Pearl seems very wrapped up in this whole thing with Brian. I'm actually trying to think who else would be a possibility.
Well, Brick's single.
Well, that's true. He seems to have been connecting a bit more with Santana lately. But
Danny may be single. If we ever see him
he's
again.
not really on the show anymore.
And then, Brian and Pearl both, in a way, I guess. So, Keith shows up as Cruz is trying to get Eden to hear the truth, and says, "Oh, leave her alone." And Cruz tells him to back off, but Eden, in fact, says to Cruz to back off. That Keith's her friend, and when Cruz leaves, Keith, of course, tries to suggest that maybe he can be there for her instead of Cruz.
No, I know she said friend, so I feel like he is in the friend zone for her rather than boyfriend material, at least at this point.
We've got a lot of triangles going on here.
We do. We do.
Gina tells Ted that he wants Lily and Haley to spend more time at the mansion to give Brandon a real family, and he is shocked that she thinks that people can be blackmailed into being a big, happy family. So, not much of a scene for Ted this episode, but it's nice to see him with Gina, because the Ted-Gina thing I kind of like. But Ted's always shocked how evil Gina is, but he's such a nice guy. So
I always, and I think I've probably said this before, I always really liked the chemistry that Ted had with the first version of Gina. I feel like his relationship with this Gina is a little bit different, and partly because she is so much more aggressive. It's sort of harder, I think, for him to kind of plead her case to anyone.
with the first Gina, I always got the idea in the back of my head that maybe someday she and Ted could end up together somehow. Courtney finds Brian having breakfast at Marv's. Even though Brian raced out of town last night, he's somehow still at Marv's in the morning. Sybil arrives to say that Pearl is on the way, and Brian hides in the back as Pearl tries to get Sybil to tell him where Brian is. But Courtney is also in the back and trying to get into Brian's good graces, still pretending just to be a random person who walked into the bar. Pearl gives Sybil a letter to pass on to Brian, because he's not that he thinks necessarily they're in contact, but he says, well, next time you send him his check, I'll give it to the courier to take to Brian, Courtney then reveals to Sybil that she is Pearl's friend, and she would like to deliver the message to Brian, which Sybil doesn't seem to be too worried about. Maybe she's just tired of the hiding herself, especially having talked to Pearl, once or twice. Courtney follows Brian to this cabin that we've heard so much about, and we pretty much see as the fireplace. I'm wondering if it's the same cabin that they used for that explosion a few years back. Courtney shows up with the letter, and due to an incoming storm, Brian has to invite her to stay at the cabin. So now I'm thinking, is Brian a potential love interest for Courtney? Since, she probably should give up on Pearl, and he's Pearl's brother, so that would be a thing. So, talking of potential triangles, we've got Alice, Brian, Courtney, and, of course, Alice, Paul, Brian. So, got a whole bunch of potential matchups coming up. But I feel like if they tried to get Courtney and Brian together, that that won't end well if they ever finally figure out that Courtney killed her sister.
Yes, I was thinking as you were saying that we haven't seen any really troubling behavior from Courtney lately. We don't really see enough of her to have that, but I would actually worry a little bit about Brian if he did get into a relationship with her for that very reason.
I mean, it is kind of weird what she's doing, following around Brian. Is it just for Pearl? So, and here's another couple. Lionel and Carolyn arrive at the Logridge house after breakfast, and Alice sees that it troubles Jane that they spent the night together. Alice tells Carolyn that she still has the letter her mother wrote her, the letters her mother wrote her, and Carolyn says that Alice's mother only had a couple of photos of Alice. And Alice wonders why Carolyn didn't spend more time with Jane. And Carolyn says she didn't know how to be a mother. Lionel watches as Carolyn tells Alice that she knows she hurt Jane by spending the night with Lionel. And she promises not to do anything to hurt Jane again. So I think Lionel is wondering if that means they won't be spending any more nights together. So that's an interesting declaration by Carolyn. Is she going to just suddenly focus most on Jane?
And one thing I think we notice in all of this, I think we've actually mentioned it before as well, that Jane's accent has become a little bit more southern than when we first met her. She throws in a few more southern cadences. So I feel like with Carolyn reemerging back into her life, she's maybe being forced to embrace some aspects of herself that maybe she had kept hidden a little bit when she moved to Santa Barbara.
And maybe, now that the actress knows her own backstory, decided that was a good idea, but it does make sense for the character too.
But we do see Jane reverting back to another character, don't we?
Carolyn hires a private detective to find someone who is out on parole. Presumably this is Alice's father, is what I'm thinking. He's trying to track him down. Jane tells Carolyn that she was interested in Lionel before Carolyn came along, and she thinks that Lionel and Carolyn probably had a good laugh about that. And the next thing we see is Jane has gone home, and she's dressed up in her old Roxanne getup to the extreme. And she returns to the Orient Express and picks up a guy named Tony at the bar. So, I don't think we ever got the idea that Roxanne actually was like a split personality or anything. I think it was just a persona. But maybe this has put her over the edge, and it will turn into a full-blown split personality storyline. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because this most recent transformation definitely seems to be a reaction to Carolyn being back and, being romantically involved with Lionel and so on. So we'll have to see, because before when we saw Roxanne, Carolyn was not in the picture. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they're going with the Roxanne thing. And that's it for this episode. Oh, we did see Nancy Lee Grahn on Melrose Place last week. We are watching season 5, I think, of Melrose Place right now, and she showed up this week as the mother of one of the characters. So, Matt's sister, I guess she is, right? Yeah. So presumably we'll see her more than once, but and we already said we saw Alejandro Rey, Dr. Ramirez on I don't know if it was Alfred Hitchcock or The Third Man or one of those old 60s ones. And that's about it lately, right?
Yeah, I was trying to think before we started our recording whether there was any other people we've seen lately. But since we watch a lot of television from the 1970s, I'm sure we're going to see someone else for our next podcast.
And I think that was it. That was it for week 121. So next week is Thanksgiving. I believe that's on Thursday. So we'll only have a 4-day week next week, and we'll probably throw in a bonus of our tales from the reunion that we have yet to record. So maybe we'll do that on Valentine's Day tomorrow. as a treat for you.
Doesn't that sound romantic?
Anyway, that is it for this week. And I guess I'm retiring the NBC shirt. And we'll be back next week to talk about NBC's Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Do this again.
You don't have to love me, Ted. Just put up with me for a few months.
While you keep Kelly a fugitive.
Your father probably has her living in a castle somewhere, being waited on hand and foot.
Well, I'm all yours.
I see you're thrilled to find me alive.